Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on the start of the federal election and the Premier factoring into early controversy. But first, social media platforms and campaign impact.
They accept that there is a concern about the synthetic content that can be misleading, and that they have committed to taking action in that regard. So we'll see what happens during the election if their commitment holds true.
The head of Elections Canada on seeking support from sites like X and TikTok to ensure the federal election is a secure one. He's also cautioning Canadians to be on the lookout for bad information about the voting process in general. Joining us now, Timothy Caulfield, Canada Research Chair in Health Law and Policy at the University of Alberta, noted author and expert on misinformation as well. Professor Caulfield, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me on, Michael.
All right, well, let's start with a straightforward question. How worried are you about information, manipulation that may be flowing out there in the social media sphere for Canadians to consume in this election?
Very, very. Well, we know, and research consistently shows us, that information on social media platforms can have a dramatic impact on elections. We've seen this not just in the United States, but really around the world. We're seeing misinformation, as you just heard, about the election process itself, about voting, about alleged fraudulent happenings. You hear misinformation about candidates, and you see misinformation about issues that are relevant to the election and then that might have an impact on voting decisions. So this is a real problem, and it comes from absolutely everywhere. And in fact, during that press conference, Election Canada noted that foreign interference, which is largely misinformation on social media platforms, should be viewed as the single greatest threat to democracy. So yeah, this really, really matters.
Okay, so is there a platform of most concern, and who or what do you see being targeted from that Canadian perspective?
Yeah, so look, I think it is important to note out of the gate, this happens across the ideological spectrum, especially at the extremes, right? But a growing body of evidence tells us in this cultural moment, we're seeing more misinformation come from, populist, and I'll let you do your own sort of definition of what that might mean, populist parties. It's become almost the norm and not just in Canada, but really around the world, for these kinds of political entities to use misinformation to forward their agendas. We're seeing misinformation, look what happened in the United States. We know that misinformation about particular topics, whether it's immigration or crime or the economy or climate change, really did have an influence on voter decisions. And we're likely to see the same thing happening here in Canada. So yeah, there are certain platforms. We know that X can be very influential for a particular community. TikTok, we know, has also been very influential, particularly for the younger demographics. So unfortunately, Michael, this misinformation is really everywhere. It's sort of permeating all of the social media platforms, so we have to be vigilant.
Well, and as we heard in the clip off the top, Elections Canada has been in contact with these social media platforms. How confident are you in the platforms committing to taking action?
Well, I love that Election Canada is doing that. I like that they're having direct conversations with the platforms. The platforms have committed to try to be, to monitor this. I'm not overly confident, unfortunately. I think that this is good news, that they're trying to address this, especially when you're talking about foreign interference, right? But we know that the algorithms that are, that drive these platforms push misinformation. And it's important to note that sometimes the misinformation isn't necessarily that overt. It might just be a social media influencer that is pushing, a conspiracy theory about a particular issue that's relevant to the election. So that's not going to be necessarily caught by the platforms, right? Even if they are being vigilant. So, I think it's really incumbent on Canadians to step up and do the very best they can to sort of monitor their own kind of, social media diet. The good news is that entities like Election Canada are creating resources like, I think it's called Electrofacts, and just Google Electrofacts, Election Canada, and they have information there about emerging topics. So that's good news. Also go to a variety of different sources whenever you see an issue emerge. Make sure that you have sort of a diverse media diet, and that is another way that you can kind of protect yourself against the bunk.
And if it is the government is keeping an eye on things and we're to rely on the platforms, are there any other organizations or bodies, academics out there who are keeping an eye on this and may play a role?
Yeah, there are entities like Media Smarts, the group that I work, Science Up First, will also be tackling the issues that emerged during the election. But I really do think that advice of going to a variety of trusted sources, right, whenever an issue emerges. Also, there's good advice is to be patient. Sometimes an issue will emerge and it'll be an exciting headline, and you kind of internalize it and share it. Make sure that if you feel like something is kind of playing to your rage, playing to your grievances, if it feels like your team just scored a touchdown, all of those kinds of emotional responses should be actually a red flag to pause, right, and to double check the veracity of the claims.
All right. We'll leave it there. As always, appreciate your time, Professor Caulfield. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Timothy Caulfield is Canada Research Chair in Health Law and Policy at the University of Alberta.